After 40 years, 7 sequels, a remake, a sequel to said remake, and an established legacy, what else could possibly be done to the Halloween franchise? Let's ignore all of that and just pick up after the original. This choose-your-own adventure of a series just keeps getting more complicated. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to my look at the Halloween franchise. Today, Laurie Strode is alive once again, but totally prepared to fight the Shape in Halloween 2018. While making a modest box office return compared to other entries, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 was not well received by audiences and critics alike. That didn't stop the studio from attempting to do another sequel titled Halloween 3D in 2011, but luckily it fell through and was cancelled. In 2015, a script titled Halloween Returns was turned in, involving Michael Myers facing his death sentence after the events of the original Halloween 1 and 2. However, its production was postponed, and after Dimension Films lost the rights to Halloween that reverted back to Miramax, the film was cancelled. In 2016, Blumhouse Productions announced that it would be partnering with Miramax and Universal to make a new film and got John Carpenter to return as executive producer, the first time he would be involved with the series since Season of the Witch. He was very impressed when co-writers David Gordon Green and Danny McBride pitched their idea that would disregard all the sequels and be a direct follow-up to the original. Green was given the directorial duties, and Jamie Lee Curtis agreed to return, as the story would deal with Laurie's trauma and how that Halloween night in 1978 affected her entire life for the worse. Michael would have been captured and returned to Smith's Grove that night, but fearing his escape, Laurie would spiral into a life of paranoia and seclusion from society, preparing for the day of Michael's escape. With all this, she would also deal with her estranged daughter Karen and granddaughter Allison. Nick Castle, the original Michael Myers, was set to reprise the role in a cameo, but the character would be played mainly by stuntman James Jude Courtney. Carpenter also agreed to take up the duties of scoring the film with his son Cody and family friend Daniel Davies. So with a new timeline being established, Jamie Lee returning, and John Carpenter completely on board, how would this franchise reboot work? Let's find out. The movie begins at Smith's Grove Sanitarium, where Michael has been locked away for 40 years. Podcast journalists Aaron and Dana are there to interview Michael, but first meet Dr. Sartain, Dr. Loomis's student who took over for him after he passed away and has been studying Michael. The three go outside to visit Myers and potentially get a word out of him. Aaron presents him with the original mask to get a reaction out of Michael, but he remains the only calm one while the rest of the inmates freak out, almost responding to the evil. The opening credits pay homage to the original with the deflated pumpkin returning to form. Almost like this movie is trying to say they're bringing a franchise back to its glory days after being beaten into the ground. Carpenter's new score for the theme here kicks ass too, the best since the original. Aaron and Dana continue their investigation by tracking down Laurie Strode, who is essentially living in a lockdown convent. She allows them in after Dana offers money in exchange for an interview with her. They use this time to establish that Laurie truly believes Michael is not human, and more so the boogeyman, while Aaron and Dana ask her about her history, which included failed marriages and a daughter, Karen, that was taken away from her. This digging angers Laurie enough for her to kick the two out and collect her money. Switch over to Karen's house, where we meet her daughter Allison and annoyingly dumb husband, Ray.
Oh, mother! Oh, man. I got peanut butter on my penis.
A line likely written by Danny McBride that makes no sense and isn't funny. It's awkward. Allison brings up the celebration dinner they're supposed to have later, where they'll get to meet her boyfriend Cameron, but she asks Karen if she spoke to her grandmother about joining them. Karen lies as naturally as she breathes, unconvincingly telling Allison they did talk and Laurie won't make it for dinner. Allison meets up with her friend Vicky and Vicky's boyfriend Dave to complain about her mother's lies and how Halloween is never a good time of the year for them.
Wasn't it her brother who cold-blooded murder-lated all those teenagers?
No. That's just a bit that some people made up to make him feel better, I think.
So there you go. This continuity is letting us flat out know that the whole brother-sister angle does not exist. It does feel kind of jammed in there, and the rumor to make him feel better explanation isn't a good one, but I think it's in there more for the average moviegoer that has it ingrained in their head that Michael and Laurie are related. Dave then kind of brings up an interesting point about the events from 1978.
There's a lot worse stuff that's happening today, and I mean, what, a couple people getting killed by one guy with a knife is not that big of a deal.
His delivery does make him come off as a dick, but I've often wondered if what happened to Laurie in just the original would really mess her up that badly. It's harsh, so I'm not totally defending Dave's comment, but it sorta makes you think. At school, Allison meets up with Cameron, and they go over their plans for the big Halloween dance, but they're interrupted by their personal space violating friend, Oscar, before class.
No bliss. His message is totally hopeful. Even in the most disparaging of conditions, life can find its meaning.
I'm sorry, I know it's a reference to the original, but I just can't help but laugh seeing old Laurie just creepily standing outside the school. The two meet up so Laurie can give Allison the money she got from the podcasters, but Allison confronts Laurie on how she's pushed away her family. Laurie feels justified in her raising of Karen to be prepared for the horrors of the world, but Allison tells her she needs to get over Michael and move on. That's never going to be the case, as Laurie does some target practice on her private range. That night, as Michael is prepped for transportation to a new facility, Aaron and Dana listen to a recording from Dr. Loomis on how to handle Michael.
My suggestion is termination. Death. It's the only solution for Michael. There's nothing to be gained from keeping evil alive.
I really like this part because it's nice to get a Loomis cameo, and the voice actor, Colin Mahan, actually does a damn good impersonation of him. Consistently referring to Michael as it, and the calmness in his voice as he describes what should be done to him is chilling. Laurie sits outside Smith's Grove, gun in hand, watching the bus transporting Michael and Dr. Sartain, but she breaks down. Allison, her parents, and Cameron enjoy dinner, but when asked about grandmother again, Karen lies with no grace. But what's this? Laurie shows up to congratulate Allison, only to display her drinking issues, and sadly has another meltdown at the table, forcing her to leave.
I never told you how I spent my childhood. I learned how to shoot a gun when I was 8. I had nightmares about the basement.
Could you be a little less deadpan, Karen, and add a little bit more emphasis? Emphasis? Cut to a father and son driving, stumbling upon a crashed bus and sanitarium inmates wandering around. The dad goes to go check it out, but when he doesn't immediately return, the son goes to investigate too, running into a dying guard on the ground and accidentally shooting an alive Dr. Sartain. He runs back to the truck, but he's not alone. Michael just killed a fucking kid. This is the moment where you know everyone is fair game. Deputy Hawkins gets a report about the bus crash and heads out to investigate, finding that the only survivor is Dr. Sartain. The next day, Halloween, Sheriff Barker meets up with Hawkins to report that all the inmates have been collected except for one. Michael Myers, the serial killer who murdered his victims on October 31st. It would be best to inform the citizens of Haddonfield to remain indoors that night, right? Nah, Barker simply laughs off that concept. Real smart that he's the dude in charge of keeping people safe. Meanwhile, Aaron and Dana stop by a gas station, but when Dana heads off to the bathroom, Aaron discovers the attendant with his jaw fucking torn and the mechanic beaten to death. I think Michael is looking for a follow-up interview. After gifting Dana with some teeth, Michael tries to capture her in the stalls, but Aaron breaks in to help, only to get utterly destroyed and beaten to a pulp, and Dana has her neck snapped. Time for Michael to be reunited with his old friend. This is one of the best scenes in the movie for me. The bathroom setting is reminiscent of H2O, but this time the occupant is in danger. Michael going door to door before finally reaching Dana, then dropping the teeth from the gas station attendant over to her is very scary. Seeing that aftermath of those two kills, too, is frightening, trying to imagine how the hell he managed to stretch a man's jaw like that. And I do feel bad seeing Aaron and Dana get killed off, cause I did find them interesting characters to follow. Then the whole thing is capped off with Michael getting his new mask, which looks excellent, like it truly has been sitting in storage all these years. When Laurie hears the news of Michael's escape, she gets herself ready and pays a visit to Karen.
Gotcha! Jesus. You're dead.
She is quickly kicked out of the house by Karen and Ray and goes on to visit the site of Aaron and Dana's death. Night has fallen and Michael has made it to Haddonfield. In the best scene in the movie, a one take shows Michael going from house to house stalking and killing people. First he beats a woman with a hammer and steals her butcher knife. He then moves on to... Oh, they wouldn't. Phew, normally I wouldn't think Michael would hurt a baby, but after killing that kid, I thought it was entirely plausible. Glad they didn't push that envelope. He does proceed to sneak into another woman's house and stab her through the neck. It's like Michael doesn't want to waste any time after being locked away for 40 years. Cut to Allison and Cameron at the high school Halloween dance, but friend Vicky is missing out and is stuck babysitting little Julian.
You talking about smoking weed? Don't lie to me. That's against the rules. I'm telling my mom.
Well, I'm gonna tell your mom about your browser history.
You better not.
These two do have fun chemistry and back and forths, making for the funnier moments of the film. But back at the dance, Allison catches Cameron kissing another girl and drinking. He's a total dick, making it sound like he did nothing wrong and she's overreacting. He tosses her phone into pudding, prompting her to leave the dance and him to leave the remainder of the film. At Julian's, Dave surprises Vicky with a visit, but as the two try to make out, Julian runs downstairs claiming to have seen the boogeyman outside his door. Vicky inspects his room and assures him that there's no one there and everything is alright. She gets him tucked in, but one last thing he wants is for her to shut the closet door. This shock moment was unfortunately ruined in the trailers, so it doesn't come off as a big surprise as it should. She's stabbed to death, but Dave opts to go upstairs and fight back. Hawkins shows up after an emergency call, but Lori also arrives after hearing the call on her police scanner. Hawkins finds Vicky's body propped up in Julian's room, while Lori spots Michael in the house from the street and opens fire. Michael casually leaves the house, Hawkins finds Dave pinned to the wall with a knife, and Lori loses track of Myers after getting in a solid shot on him.
Jesus Christ, Lori! Fuck me! Fuck!
The police arrive on the scene to collect the bodies, but when Lori freaks out on them for not doing anything about Michael, she meets the now up and around Dr. Sartain.
I'm Michael's doctor, Ranbir Sartain.
You're the new Loomis.
This was a line that made me chuckle the first time I heard it. Upon multiple rewatches, it feels too tongue-in-cheek. Sartain joins Hawkins on the search for Michael, explaining that he wants to know what drives Michael to kill and what pleasure he gets out of it. What? This? Just holding up a red flag. Doesn't mean a damn thing. Oscar walks Allison home, but after grossly coming on to her, she pushes him away and leaves him behind. Luckily, Michael has been watching the whole time.
Have you ever really liked a girl and you just couldn't have her?
A pain Michael knows all too well. The motion sensor lights help Michael disappear and reappear in front of Oscar, but he doesn't do anything. Well, never mind. Oscar runs and screams for his life, but Michael easily catches up to him, stabs him in the back, and impales him on the gate's spike. Allison returns to help, but only finds the brutal aftermath. The music cue here, The Shape Hunts Allison, is my favorite track in the score. I get the chills every time it kicks in. It's too bad it doesn't last longer because Allison quickly finds help from some locals and is picked up by Hawkins. Lori has taken Karen and Ray back to her place to hunker down, revealing her secret bunker that includes a full arsenal of guns. On their way back to Lori's, Hawkins, Allison, and Sartain spot Michael and run him down without a second thought. Hawkins is ready to blow his brains out, but as Sartain checks Michael's breathing, I lied. Yes, it turns out Sartain is no good and set up Michael's escape in order to observe his behavior out in the wild, as he would say. The one-armed man throws Michael in the back seat with Allison and explains to her that he wants to reunite him with Lori because he believes his pursuit of her is what drives him. When spouting off about how Michael has never spoken, Allison says he spoke to her, but will only tell him what he said if he lets her go. But Michael wakes up from his nap, breaks out of the car, and drags out Sartain, allowing Allison to escape into the woods.
Say something.
Jesus Christ! I'm sorry, I feel like I have the same reaction when someone's head just fucking explodes, but god damn, that was gnarly. Two deputies that were stationed outside Lori's house pull up to the scene, unaware of the situation at hand. Everything must have gone alright though, because they pull up in front of the house. Michael moves fast. He carved that one guy's head like a pumpkin in a matter of minutes. That's skill. It is a trap as Michael pops up from behind and strangles Ray. Lori spots Michael outside and the two lock eyes. Boarding up the door, she instructs Karen to hide in the bunker. Ready for the fight she's prepared for 40 years, Lori is attacked through the door by Michael, who almost manages to end the fight before it can even begin. Laurie retreats downstairs and apologizes to Karen for everything while Michael breaks in. She goes back upstairs to locate him in a pretty suspenseful scene, going from room to room, locking each one down, but expecting Michael to appear any minute. Her final stop is in the mannequin room. The brawl allows Michael to stab Laurie and toss her off the balcony. As he inspects her lifeless body, his attention is briefly diverted to the sound of Allison announcing her arrival. When he looks back...
Well, well, well. How the turntables...
Allison makes it to the basement, but after Michael rips open the hiding spot, Karen is a wreck who doesn't believe she has the strength to beat him. Laurie re-emerges and the three women gang up on him, getting in their hits until barricading him in the basement. The house is actually one big elaborate trap that will set everything ablaze and cage Michael inside. But even after the fire starts, Michael calmly stands in place and stares back at the girls as if he knows that this isn't the end for him. The girls leave Michael and the burning house and hitch a ride in the back of a passing truck. Wait, that's the ending? Abrupt much? My overall thoughts on Halloween 2018. It's fine, but it could have been better. By Halloween sequel standards, I understand why a lot of fans refer to it as the best outside of the original, but to me, it's only frustratingly decent. There are plenty of things to like, mostly the performances from Jamie Lee as Laurie and James Jude Courtney as Michael. Jamie Lee gives an emotional performance at times and helps us feel for the woman whose life has been tortured by an event that has plagued her. She gives off the appearance of a gun-wielding badass, but you see her moments of absolute weakness when she tries to confront her demons. James Courtney is the best Michael since Nick Castle. He nails the look, feel, and movement of the original Myers. I have no doubts that I'm watching the same character from 40 years ago. It's the first time since the original that it feels like he really is this supernatural boogeyman, but now he's more brutal. I will also briefly mention that Will Patton as Deputy Hawkins is a well done performance. He's easily my favorite character outside of Laurie and Michael. I think the score is fantastic. Thank God Carpenter came back to compose it because he knocks it out of the park. It works so well to enhance the movie like it did with the original, and there are several tracks that give me the chills. The cinematography is probably at its best since the original as well, with its clean look and use of lighting for reveals and whatnot. For as much as I like some of the sequels, I'm a big advocate of ignoring them in this situation. The lore had gotten so messed up over time that it had just become silly and not as scary as Carpenter's original intent. Eliminating the brother-sister element that tied the franchise down was smart, as it removed Michael having a motive and went back to him being a faceless evil that kills for no purpose. I do love how vicious the kills are here, even though a bunch of them are done off screen. Seeing the result of Michael's work is just as terrifying as watching him do it. You develop your own picture of how it went down, and the brutality frightens you as you wonder just what the hell is capable of committing such acts. With my positives thrown out there, my negatives with the film stem from my frustrations in characters and thoughts on how some things could have been executed better. While I praised Laurie, I have no idea why she would have stayed around Haddonfield, where the most traumatizing event in her life happened. I know she tells Hawkins she prayed every night Michael would escape so she could kill him, but she also says Michael is not human with no real motive. With that knowledge, why on earth would she believe he would immediately try to hunt her down 40 years later? Because he didn't. We saw he just randomly went from house to house because he has no real straightforward intent and just picks out someone and gets them. This relates to my issues with Dr. Sartain, who has been studying Myers for decades and still thinks there's something that drives him. He was Loomis's student, so he had to come to some understanding that there was no drive, just pure evil. Sartain is probably my biggest problem for several reasons. The twist reveal of him being a bad guy almost stops the movie dead for me. He kills Hawkins, one of my favorite characters, puts on Michael's mask, which looked incredibly dumb, and shows that ultimately his presence was only needed to be a transport from Michael to Laurie. Without him, there's no final showdown because Michael's goal isn't to get to Laurie, it's just to kill whoever. I get that he's also a representation of what Loomis could have been if his Michael obsession were different, but that goes nowhere because just as soon as he reveals his plans, he gets his fucking head crushed and he's instantly pointless. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of Allison or Karen either. Karen is just unbearable and has some of the cringiest lines delivered in the most monotone performance. Her one redeeming moment is when she tricks Michael and gets that shot on him in the basement. Allison isn't that bad, but I don't care for the typical teenager drama she goes through with Cameron and Oscar, and she isn't really relevant throughout the movie's events until the end, even though she was kind of being set up as the new Laurie. That also makes me wonder who exactly is supposed to be our protagonist. We going with Laurie because she's our returning heroine, or are you trying to make it Allison because she's the fresh new blood? I understand them wanting to bring in 3 generations of women to stand strong and fight off the evil, but the focus is uneven between them all, and in all honesty, I only care about Laurie and her development, so when one of the other girls is on screen, I just want to get back to her. The last act is where most of it falls apart for me. I mentioned not liking the Sartain reveal, but the final fight between Michael and Laurie is terribly anticlimactic. Her hunt for him is a little tense, but then she's stabbed and thrown out the window. Then there's a reveal that the basement wasn't a cage, it was a trap, which Karen lamely points out. It's like, yeah, no shit it was. The house goes up in flames, the girls drive away, and that's the end. I remember my first time seeing this and thinking there needed to be like an extra 5 to 10 minutes because it felt super abrupt. And I still don't get the still frame zoom in on Allison holding the knife at the end. Was it a Halloween 4 throwback and they're implying she could become a killer? If I had my druthers, I would get rid of Karen and Allison entirely, or only keep one of them. Also, get rid of Sartain, make Deputy Hawkins the sheriff, not that joke Barker, and perhaps give Aaron and Dana more to do because I like them. The large cast of characters makes the focus shift too often, and it does get a little too cluttered at times. All of this doesn't make it bad, but it's frustrating because you know that with some changes here and there, it could have been an extremely worthy sequel to the original. I know I reviewed this movie when it first came out and gave it a higher praise, but 2 years and multiple rewatches have swayed my opinion. You don't like that? Oh well. So while some characters feel pointless, the overall story can be jumbled and rough at times, and the ending is a letdown, I enjoy the performances from Jamie Lee Curtis, James Hugh Courtney, and Will Patton. The cinematography looks crisp, the soundtrack is godly, and the kills are great for a modern day slasher. I give Halloween 2018 3.5 butcher knives out of 5. But let me know your thoughts. Do you think this is the best sequel in the franchise? Or are you bothered by the story and characters at certain points? How would you have changed it? And what was your favorite kill? Don't forget to subscribe and follow my Twitter and Instagram. Links to those are in the description. Well, that's it for Halloween for now. There are 2 more sequels to this 2018 film scheduled for release in 2021 and 2022 titled Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. Hopefully this little trilogy will have a satisfying ending for Laurie and Michael. The series remains my second favorite behind Friday the 13th, even with all the confusing timelines, and Michael Myers sits just behind Jason as my favorite slasher. It's a franchise that has its peaks and valleys, but it's impossible to top the lightning in a bottle that was John Carpenter's original. But now that I've covered the big 3, Friday, Nightmare, and Halloween, what should I do? A total of 31 movies, and October 31st is coming up. Let's rank these sons of bitches. I'll see you guys on Halloween for 31 on the 31st. Until next time, peace.